Finding mold in your home, it's just one of those moments that makes your stomach drop, right? It's stressful, it's worrying, and it immediately kicks off a huge dilemma about what to do next.
And that's the big one, the core question we're going to tackle right now. And hey, this isn't just about convenience, it's really all about safety. So should you stay or should you go?
Look, there's no simple yes or no answer that works for everyone. That's why we're going to walk through all the key factors you need to think about. By the end of this, you'll have a solid framework to make the safest choice for you.
All right, so let's get right into it. Before you can even think about whether to stay, you've got to understand what mold remediation actually involves. And I'll tell you right now, it is way more than just grabbing some bleach and a sponge.
You see, the pros have a really specific multi-step process. First, they have to completely seal off the area. Then they often have to physically remove contaminated stuff like drywall. After that, they bring in these big HEPA air filtration machines to scrub the air clean. And finally, they do a deep cleaning with antimicrobial treatments. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty disruptive process. It's loud, it's messy, it's a whole production.
And here's the kicker. That whole process creates two major hazards you need to be aware of. First, the moment you start disturbing mold, you're sending millions of tiny spores flying into the air. And second, the chemicals they use to kill it can give off some pretty potent fumes. Those two things right there, that's why just hanging around during the cleanup can be a really bad idea.
Okay, so let's talk about the case for leaving. Because honestly, in some situations, the decision is pretty much made for you. These are the red flag scenarios where getting out of the house isn't just a suggestion, it's absolutely critical for your safety. And let's be clear about what the pros think. The vast majority of professional remediation companies will strongly advise you not to be in the house during a big mold removal job. And you know what? When the people who deal with this stuff day in and day out tell you it's safer to leave, you should probably listen. They see the risks firsthand.
So here's red flag number one, and it's a big one: the type of mold. If you hear names like Stachybotrys, that's the infamous black mold, or Aspergillus, the game changes. These aren't your run-of-the-mill molds. They can produce something called mycotoxins, which are genuinely nasty substances. When the remediation starts and those get kicked up into the air, that's a serious health risk you do not want to be around.
The next huge red flag is just the sheer size of the problem. You know, a tiny patch of mold in the corner of the bathroom, that's one thing. But when you're talking about a large-scale infestation that's spread to multiple rooms, well, that's a whole different beast. It makes containing all those airborne spores way, way harder, which just jacks up your risk of exposure.
And another big reason to leave is the chemicals. To really knock out the mold for good, pros often use some serious stuff, like biocides and fungicides. The name biocide literally means life killer. And the fumes from these things are no joke. We're talking headaches, dizziness, respiratory irritation, even if you're perfectly healthy.
But, okay, it's not always a clear-cut, get-out-now situation. There is a gray area. There are some scenarios where staying put might actually be an option. But, and this is a big but, only if a very strict set of conditions are met.
The general rule of thumb that professionals use often starts with this magic number: 10 square feet. If the total area of mold is less than that, it's generally considered a small enough job that staying home could potentially be on the table. But again, size alone isn't enough. For staying to be even a remote possibility, you have to check 3 boxes. 1, the mold is in one small single area. 2, the professionals set up a totally airtight containment zone. We're talking plastic barriers and something called negative air pressure to make sure nothing escapes. And 3, the whole project is super short, like 1 or 2 days tops.
So here's a little cheat sheet to make it simple. On one side, you've got the definite leave scenarios: large infestation, toxic mold, long project. On the other side, you've got the maybe stay column: small area, non-toxic, super quick job. This is a great way to quickly size up where your situation falls.
All right, now we need to talk about what is, without a doubt, the single most important piece of this puzzle: the people who actually live in your house. Honestly, this factor can override everything else we've just discussed.
So you have to ask yourself and be really honest here. Who in my home is the most vulnerable? Because the risk from mold spores and chemical fumes is absolutely not the same for every single person.
And here's the bottom line. If you have children, elderly folks, or anyone who is immunocompromised, like someone going through chemo, the decision is already made. They need to leave.
Same goes for anyone with existing respiratory issues like asthma, COPD, or even severe allergies. For these high-risk individuals, you just don't take the chance. It doesn't matter how small the job is. The risk is just too high. Period.
Okay, so now you've got the information, you understand the variables, let's put it all together into an action plan so you can make that final call and feel good about it. You might want to grab a screenshot of this slide, seriously. These are the critical questions you need to ask your remediation contractor. How will they contain the area? Will they use negative air pressure? What exact chemicals are they going to use? And finally, just ask them straight up. What is your professional recommendation for my family? Their answers will tell you everything you need to know.
And of course, there's always the money question, right? If you do have to leave, will insurance cover a hotel? Well, it depends. Typically, if the mold was caused by a sudden, covered event, like a pipe bursting, then yeah, you're probably covered. But if the mold grew over time because of something like poor ventilation, then you're likely out of luck.
And one last super important piece of advice. Whether you decide to stay in another part of the house or you leave completely, do not go back into that cleaned area until you get the official all clear. That means you need to see the results of a post-remediation air quality test that confirms the mold levels are safely back to normal. Don't just take their word for it. See the report.
So there you have it. You've got the whole framework now. You know the risks, you know the red flags that scream leave, and you know the strict conditions that might let you stay. Most importantly, you know how to put the health of your family first. Now you're equipped to answer the only question that really matters.